Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, we go a-wassailing in Asheville, North Carolina. It's kind of like Christmas caroling, with a kick.
Yeah, as you heard in the last song, we did ask for alcohol several times.
Okay. Do you want alcohol? It's not like...
You guys have some cups. I've seen it.
Also, family recipes bring generations together. But what happens when you've got Grandma's potato candy recipe and it doesn't have exact measurements?
People are like, no, it doesn't taste that good. I was like, no, something's not right. Like, I got to get this right.
And a new book explores the magical dark side of nature.
But she sighs when she accepts the mycelium, as though she's traded something heavy for a puff of light.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the COPD Foundation, offering educational materials and information on COPD symptoms, treatments, and diagnoses. Learn more at copdfoundation.org. Support for this program is brought to you by Solar Holler, helping Appalachian businesses and nonprofits manage energy costs through solar power. Information at solarholler.com.
The following is an Encore episode. Season's greetings. Welcome inside Appalachia. The winter holidays are a chance to get together and find some good cheer. It's also when people get to show off their creativity decorating and break out the good china for company. Here at Inside Appalachia, it's also a chance for us to share some of our favorite holiday stories. We begin with a story about an ancient singing tradition. In Asheville, North Carolina, one group of friends has been taking part in the English singing tradition of wassailing. It's like Christmas caroling, but older. And for some of the singers, wassailing has become a way to connect to their roots. In 2023, Folkways reporter Rebecca Williams had this story.
On a cold December night in Asheville, North Carolina, a group of about 20 people are gathering on a stranger's front porch. Some of them have been coming together for the past decade to celebrate the holidays, build community, and most important, wassail. One of the wassailers knocks on the door.
We're wassailers, and we would like to sing you songs.
I'd be delighted.
Lily white, lily, oh lily white pin, please to come down and let us come in.
Sarah Lynch Thomason leads the Asheville group. At 36 years old, Sarah wears her dark hair short on one side and long on the other. Tonight, she sports a bright red scarf and a cluster of bells that ring when she walks. She explains that wassailing is a centuries-old tradition with English roots.
The term wassail comes from an Anglo-Saxon phrase that meant good health. So it was a toast to good health. So wassail itself was a drink usually made from ale and cooked apples and a lot of spices that would be served in households, often, again, around Twelfth Night or Christmas time or New Year's, and coincided with a tradition in the Middle Ages of working class folk, peasants, going to the homes of the wealthy and having this customary charitable exchange where the working people are singing to and blessing the wealthy master and mistress of the house. And in exchange, they're being gifted food, they're being gifted cider and wassail, and they're being often gifted money as well.
Bring us some cider, we'll drink down.
Tonight's wassailers don't ask for money, but after singing at a house decorated with bright holiday lights, they do ask for another gift.
Yeah, as you heard in the last song, we did ask for alcohol several times.
Okay. Do you want alcohol? It's not like...
You guys have some cups. I've seen it.
Wassailing isn't your typical round of Christmas caroling. It's more mischievous. And that's something that the Asheville group takes very seriously.
This was a really fun and rowdy tradition, and it eventually got displaced by caroling in the Victorian era. You know, it was considered kind of too rambunctious by the emerging culture. And so the spirit of what we're trying to return to is that kind of raucous, fun feeling of these strangers with a party showing up at your door.
And a little more liquor won't do us no harm.
In fact, wassailing developed such a bad reputation for public drunkenness, it was banned by the Puritans in England and was highly discouraged by religious leaders who settled in the U.S. But recently, the tradition has had a renaissance in both England and America. One wassailer, Leela Weinstein, has been with the group for about 5 years. She explains what draws her to this tradition.
I love the old songs. I love ballads. I love all the medieval imagery, and then just the camaraderie of singing together and, lighting up the night with some song.
For Caleb Magoon, tonight is an excuse for a really good time, and it's a way of connecting to others.
It's just getting together with people every year that you may not see otherwise, and having a fun time being silly.
But members of the Asheville group aren't just drawn to wassailing because of the rowdy good time and the sense of community. For participants like Aaron Gann Clark, it's also a way to connect with the traditions of their ancestors.
I think that for me, I was raised in a Catholic faith, and so I always knew about Christmas caroling, but I feel like these songs that are older are connecting me to my ancestors and more ancient roots, and I just dig it. It feels good in my body.
Most of the wassailers here in Asheville are white, and wassailing seems to help them connect to their ancestral traditions and ethnic identity. For Sarah and many of her white peers, they feel disconnected from a sense of ethnic identity. And Sarah says that here in the U.S., that's by design.
There's been a long and very purposeful project of making people white here, of having people forget their ancestral identities and becoming white as a way to create racial hierarchies and reinforce white supremacy. When you came off the boat, whatever period, there was a project here of making you become white and forget your ancestral languages and traditions. And so today, white folks in this country are experiencing a lot of grief and have a lot of yearning for ancestral practices.
Sarah has experienced this grief of ethnic ambiguity firsthand. And when she was in her mid-20s, she decided to learn about the traditions of her ancestors.
In my case, I have ancestors from England, Ireland, Scotland, Germany, Scandinavia, kind of all over the place. And there's several hundred years of separation from any of the traditions from those places. So, I've sought out and learned from other people English folk songs, Scottish ballads.
Sarah says that connecting with these English and Scottish folk songs has had a big impact.
And there's something really powerful to me about speaking words and singing songs, holding those vibrations, those words, those forms of knowledge in my body, and knowing that people in my ancestry also sang these songs and held these words.
The boar's head, as I understand,
But it's not always easy to learn songs and rituals that haven't been passed down from generation to generation. There are challenges to singing a 700-year-old song. During rehearsal, the wassailing group struggles with Latin pronunciations.
Servire, I'm sure this is wrong. Let us servire, I don't know, I'm changing it as I do it. Let us servire cantico. Let us servire cantico.
That's some Latinglish right there.
It's messy trying to reconfigure a 15th century English tradition for 21st century Asheville. But Sarah says that it's important that white folks make the effort to learn about their ethnic identities and the practices of their ancestors.
When we aren't able to connect to those practices, we end up appropriating and attaching to other cultures, indigenous cultures and African American cultures. And it's really important to understand that in indigenous history here and in African American history, song and dance traditions and many spiritual traditions were illegal for a very, very long time. We have to think about how painful that is then for white folks to then be trying to borrow or utilize those traditions without much context for them when we, as white people, actually have those traditions in our ancestry that we can be seeking out in a healthier way.
Old Christmas is past, 12th night is the
Back on the porch, as the group finishes singing, one of the people in the house returns with a bottle of wine. And one of the wassailers, Rochelle, slips on a costume that looks like it's made out of red and blue rags. She's wearing a wreath on her head that's wrapped in fake ivy with battery-operated candles on top. A sure cue that we're no longer in the Middle Ages.
Spirit of earth and light, traveling.
The spirit of the new year emerges from behind the singers and dances up to the owners of the house to make a toast.
Did everyone get wine?
I just think we so badly need community, and there are so many ways that our current culture divides us from each other and isolates us from each other. And when you get people together to sing together, something really, really powerful happens for us, and it happens in our bones. It happens at like this molecular level, and we need it. And so to create that with a group of people and then bring that as a gift to others, to say, hey, we are, even if you're feeling isolated in your home or isolated in your community, we show up and we sing to you. That's a powerful gift.
We have traveled many miles over hedges and stiles.
For Inside Appalachia, this is Rebecca Williams in Asheville, North Carolina.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in the region. You can find more Folkways stories about marbles and pierogies, old time and hip hop. They're at our website, wvpublic.org. Holiday music isn't just for humans. In 2019, former Inside Appalachia producer Roxy Todd traveled to a farm in Bluefield, Virginia. That's where she met a herd of music-loving goats that gather each Christmas to listen to the sound of carols played on a church organ.
There's a tradition in Appalachia of observing Old Christmas on January 6th. Folklore suggests that animals speak, so children are encouraged to go to bed early. But honestly, if someone told me that, I think I would try to sneak out and catch a glimpse of animals talking. But it turns out you don't have to wait till January 6th to hear goats singing to Christmas carols. Yep, those are goats singing along to "O Come, All Ye Faithful." Connie Bailey Kitts is the owner of these musical goats and of the massive organ that the goats apparently love to listen to. The organ that Connie keeps at her farm dates back to the 1920s. Her family bought it about 50 years ago.
So my brother Daryl goes to my dad and he says, "How much do you think I should offer for the organ?" And my dad, being the local vet / world-class horse trader, said, "Oh, I think you should offer maybe about $25 for it."
So the family bought the organ from a nearby church for $25.
And I don't know what the value of the organ was. I'm sure in the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars was probably the original value of the organ.
This is an enormous church organ we're talking about. There are actually more than 600 metal and wooden pipes, and they all play a different note. They moved the organ to their family farm, and Connie's brother is a classically trained musician, so he'd play the organ at family gatherings, especially at Christmas. A few years ago, Connie's father passed away, and most of her family lives scattered across the country, so they rarely get to see each other these days. This year, her brother couldn't make the trip due to the weather. But Connie and her husband started a new tradition of inviting neighbors over to sing carols.
Oh, we always do "O Come, All Ye Faithful" because it sounds so majestic on the organ. And "Joy to the World," of course. And "Hark the Herald Angels Sing."
That's Connie's neighbor, Susan Allen, playing the organ for a small gathering of children and adults. And there are animal fans of music who gather around the organ too.
Yeah, if they hear the music playing, they just immediately, they'll come down from the field when they hear the organ. And the organ's really, really powerful. If you open the door, you can hear it 300, 400 feet away from where it is. So it's got a really, really big sound, and they're drawn to it. Sometimes if the door's open, if they're outside, you can see them, they'll just lift their ears up like they're trying to catch more of the sound of the organ. I think they don't know quite what to make of it. And then when you open the door, they don't hesitate at all to go in. And the sound of the organ, it doesn't intimidate them either. It's just amazing.
Connie also runs a small Airbnb, which at times does attract guests from as far away as Russia. She had a guest a few years ago who plays percussion for the Moscow Philharmonic, and he sat down to play the organ and entertain the goats. But the goats actually don't seem to mind who's playing the organ. They just love the music. Here they are singing along as one of Connie's neighbors, Jim Bartlett, plays Joy to the World. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Roxy Todd.
Communion wafers are an important part of church traditions. After the break, 2 West Virginia chefs are pairing them with apple butter for an unexpected appetizer. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the Charleston, West Virginia Convention and Visitors Bureau, featuring family-friendly activities such as Holly Jolly Brawley and Light the Night at Go-Mart Ballpark this holiday season. Details at charlestonwv.com.
A lot of stories in this week's episode come from our Folkways reporting project. Like this next one. Mike Costello and Amy Dawson are the husband and wife duo behind Lost Creek Farm in Harrison County, West Virginia. The couple hosts farm-to-table suppers. Along with the meal, they share stories behind the recipes. To start their suppers, Mike and Amy typically begin with an appetizer that mashes up 2 food traditions from their childhoods. In 2022, Folkways reporter Margaret McLeod Leaf brought us this story.
Today at Lost Creek Farm, the birds are chirping and the sun is shining over the rolling meadows. I'm here with Mike Costello and Amy Dawson, and they're giving me a tour of the farm. We visit the chickens, and Mike tells me about some of the projects they're working on.
We're building a fruit orchard. There were some apple trees here on the farm when we moved in, some pear trees, a lot of wild fruit, a lot of wild blackberries, elderberries, raspberries, those kinds of things.
Mike and Amy have lived on this land for 6 years, but it's been in Amy's family for close to 150 years. Amy learned a lot about working a farm when she would come to visit her grandparents.
Growing up, my family always had a big garden, and we always would can. And so most of my summers were spent essentially doing food prep. Like if you live on a farm, you just do food prep all the time and food preservation.
When Mike and Amy inherited the farm, it had been neglected for years, so they devoted themselves to getting the farm back in working order. The couple raised meat rabbits and laying hens. They foraged for foods in the surrounding woods. They raised vegetables from heirloom seeds entrusted to them by community members. And they've got their fruit orchard. Mike takes me down below the vegetable garden and chicken yard to the orchard.
Yeah, a lot of these trees that we have down here are little regional varieties of apples. Yesterday we grafted 21 trees that will go into the orchard. We'll plant them later this year.
The couple will use these apples for a few different things, including apple butter. Amy says the apple butter is caramelized and tastes sweet. Mike likes to play around with flavors and adds bourbon and sage to hit some fiery and herby notes. For Amy, making apple butter takes her back to her childhood.
Apple butter was the first experience that I had that I remember. As a family, we would always can, and it being kind of a community. Like, it wasn't just my family that did it. It was friends and, extended family would come and make the apple butter in the fall.
The seasonal ritual of making apple butter helped Amy understand the connection between food and community. It's a daunting task to peel, core, and chop bushels of apples and then stir them for hours over heat before canning. If ever an event called for community effort, it's one like this one, and time spent cooking with large groups of neighbors and friends is as social as it is productive. Amy isn't the only one of the couple to grow up with memories of cooking and community. Mike grew up in Elkview, West Virginia, and he often accompanied his grandmother to Emmanuel Baptist Church to make communion wafers.
Something I have a lot of fond memories of when I was a kid was her and the other elderly women in the church making communion wafers on Thursday and Friday mornings for Sunday service. And she would take my brother and I down there on those mornings, and we would sort of watch all these women rolling out these big sheets of dough and making these communion wafers.
As an adult, Mike had put the wafers out of his mind until he discovered his grandmother's recipe.
When my grandma died, I got her recipe collection, and I found this recipe in there for those communion wafers.
For Mike, the significance of this recipe has little to do with religion.
We did not go to church with my grandma on Sundays, so I never had any sort of idea of the religious significance of them. I just thought they were this tasty kind of snack, I kind of forgotten about them.
Discovering the recipe brought back memories for Mike.
What came to mind for me was, that image of all those women making those communion wafers and how it sort of represented to me the first memory that I have of people here or anywhere else making food as a community.
In their work today, Mike and Amy have merged these two traditions and are sharing them with others. Last year, they made an online video tutorial of how to make the wafers. In the video, Mike dips a small knife into a jar of their apple butter and spreads it on a crispy cracker for Amy.
Did you try it yet with this apple butter?
Yeah, that's really good.
I love it.
It's kind of funny that we snack on communion wafers so much.
It's hilarious. Nobody ever believes us.
They're so good.
People who know us or are familiar with our work know that we love to hone in on the stories behind the food that we make. And that's what makes these communion wafers so special to us.
The recipe itself is simple. In the video tutorial, Mike and Amy put the ingredients together using a straightforward ratio.
So then we'll add our water. Again, 4 parts, 1 part, 1 part. So we use 1 cup of flour. We're using 1/4 cup of water, 1/4 cup of oil.
And it comes together pretty quickly. And you want it to be a nice even dough. It won't be sticky. Everything, if you get the ratio right, everything will come together and it'll clean the side of the bowls.
In the recipes for both the apple butter and wafers, there's one ingredient that isn't tangible, but is just as important as the others. It's the group effort aspect of these recipes, the shared ritual of making food together. For Mike, this is especially true for the communion wafers.
So I love to put those crackers on a plate to open our events when you can consume that at the dinner table and can consume the story that goes along with it. You're connecting with people and you're connecting with thousands of years of history and all of the hands and all of the communities that it has passed through to get to that point.
The apple butter and communion wafers are symbolic of the dinner events themselves, a place where people come together around Appalachian foods and traditions. Arriving at the farm, guests are greeted with music and a warm fire burning outside. Under string lights and bright stars, folks are seated around the communal table, some meeting for the first time. Some of the food served are simple, like apple butter and communion wafers. But there's more to it than that.
If you just look at the ingredients, you look at the recipes, apple butter on a cracker is not that big of a deal, right? But to us, there's so much meaning packed into it.
Part of that meaning is the communities of people who have shaped these two food traditions, and the new communities Mike and Amy are creating at Lost Creek Farm. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Margaret McLeod Leaf in Harrison County, West Virginia.
A lot of families have tried and true holiday recipes. It might be an aunt's fruitcake or an uncle's New Year's punch. A while back, some of my relatives tried to figure out how to replicate my late grandma's rum balls. If you're lucky, these treasured family recipes get passed down. Sometimes they're written on old note cards or stashed in loose-leaf cookbooks. These recipes can be a way to connect with the past. Thing is, not all of them use exact measurements. So how do you know you're getting the mix right, especially if you've never tried it? For Brenda Sandoval in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, an old family recipe involves some trial and error and an assist from a cousin. In 2023, Capri Cafaro brought us this.
Brenda Sandoval has been making her grandmother's potato candy recipe for years. Today, she's peeling just one potato to make her next batch.
This is going to be a little batch today.
Brenda is a striking woman with long dreadlocks and intricate tattoos adorning her arms. She tells me about the day she discovered her grandmother's potato candy recipe.
I came across the recipe in some recipe books my aunt had given me that were my grandmother's that she had been holding on to. I found this recipe. It was her handwriting on a piece of paper, and it was pea period candy. So the two pea ingredients were the potato and the peanut butter and the confectionate sugar, but she had a side note of things that she added, which were salt, milk, and vanilla.
Like many handwritten recipes, Brenda's family potato candy recipe did not use units like cups or teaspoons.
The dash was the vanilla, the pinch was the salt, and the milk was labeled as, I want to say it was 4 splashes, is how she had it.
Brenda was intrigued. She wanted to see if she could recreate the recipe.
Of course, the first couple of times I'm making it, I'm just literally with the milk jug, just like splashing it over it, and it didn't work.
But Brenda had never eaten her grandmother's potato candy, so she wasn't sure what it was supposed to taste like. Family members who tried those early batches said it didn't taste quite right. Something was missing.
It just did not. People were like, no, it doesn't taste that good. I was like, no, something's not right. Like, I got to get this right.
So Brenda set out on a mission to make her grandmother's potato candy recipe taste like the real deal. And getting it right wasn't easy.
Okay.
Brenda was chasing a taste memory. Eventually, she enlisted a family member in the pursuit.
As you're tasting it, you're trying to match it to what, like, Grandma's was back when you were little and everyone goes over to Grandma's on Christmas Eve.
That's Valerie Bovey. She's Brenda's cousin. And unlike Brenda, Valerie actually tasted her grandmother's potato candy. She remembers how it tasted when she ate it on Christmas Eve.
That's the flavor you got to try to find, which is hard to explain exactly what that flavor is, but it's definitely that Grandma's house Christmas Eve flavor.
Brenda and Valerie worked together closely, Valerie tasting each batch and Brenda adjusting the ingredients based on Valerie's feedback.
She trusts me that I know what it should taste like, and like I let her know when it is good, and she's just like really happy that, you know, she's accomplished that same taste.
Their collaboration worked. Brenda's determination and Valerie's taste memory led to a breakthrough.
She was like, no, this is right. Whatever you did, keep doing this.
Potato candy is a food icon across Appalachia. It became popular during the Great Depression because it was cheap and easy to make. This sugary sweet confection is usually composed of just 3 inexpensive ingredients: peanut butter, powdered sugar, and of course, potatoes. The candy looks like a reverse pumpkin log, with a brown swirl of peanut butter wrapped in the white, pasty potato mix. When it's sliced, some people say the pieces look like pinwheels.
So when you're starting your potato candy mix, it's almost like you're making homemade mashed potatoes. That's actually what we want to do. But as we add the vanilla, the milk, and the salt, and a little bit of the sugar, we're going to get a real, it's almost looks like syrup. I'm assuming it's the sugar.
Over the years, Brenda has mastered the potato candy recipe.
I have a 4-pound bag.
Back in the kitchen, she's assembling her ingredients to be mixed. She adds the splash of milk, dash of vanilla, and pinch of salt to the mashed potatoes, and lots of powdered sugar. As I watch the mixture turn into paste, I ask Brenda about the reaction she gets when people eat her potato candy.
Most people, the first thing they say is, I remember eating it when my grandmother or my great-grandmother or my aunt, it was always a family member making it, and they could remember the taste.
Brenda thinks her potato candy has something special that sets it apart.
I think it's the little side note of my grandmother's that makes the difference.
That's the side note to add the dash of vanilla, pinch of salt, and the splashes of milk. And it's not just the extra ingredients that make her potato candy different. She brings something more to the process.
I like to take my time and think about my grandmother or my ancestors as I'm baking it. And I think maybe it's coming from the heart. It's just very emotional sometimes.
It's clear the potato candy is more than just a sweet treat to Brenda. It's about sustaining tradition and holding on to family memories.
I want it to go to someone, at least even if they don't make it, just have the recipe. Just pass the recipe down. Like maybe further down, generations down, someone will want to make it.
Brenda's cousin Valerie is doing her part to keep their family's potato candy tradition going. She wants to keep those taste memories alive for future generations.
Because my kids are such fans of it. I want to make sure that I get the recipe down pat so that I can make it with my kids and my now grandchildren. And I just want us to be able to all get together, have good family memories, have fun making it together, and enjoying it together.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Capri Cafaro.
A lot of folks get nostalgic about trains, especially around the holidays. Hollywood tapped into that nostalgia with The Polar Express, a 2004 movie about a magical train ride to the North Pole. In 2023, WVPB's Brianna Heaney visited Cass State Park and rode along on West Virginia's version of the Polar Express.
Big white plumes of steam interlace with black torrents of smoke and sink down to the Greenbrier River, hovering just above the surface. Inside, the train carts are decorated with garland and ornaments. Families come prepared to this event with bags full of goodies and thermoses filled with hot chocolate. Sing-alongs break out throughout the ride. Later, there will be a bake-off in town, and then bingo night. All for the hundreds of weekend visitors to this little town that has a year-round population of 30 people. This is all part of an effort to keep Cass open later in the year and keep a steady flow of tourism through the town so that the history can be preserved. J.T. Arbogast has a long family heritage with this town. His great-grandfather owned the grocery store that rivaled the paper mill's company store. And he says his father wore out 3 cars driving to Charleston every week to lobby to have the town's history protected. He has been working to keep this town alive year-round.
There wasn't anything past the fall, really. Once the leaves were done, the state shut things down, and so the houses and the town was pretty dark to come driving through here.
The trains used to only be open for scenic rides in the summer and fall. But then, the president of the Durbin and Greenbrier Valley Railroad Incorporated, John Smith, had the idea to start offering a Christmas train experience.
And we thought, well, if we're going to be doing that, like what's the way that we can create an experience for people who are coming into town?
The town of Cass is an old lumbering town. Every home has the exact same build, and all the town buildings are painted white. There are 3 rows of identical homes, a community center, a barber shop the size of a shed, the rail station, and a large house on top of a hill where the mill owners lived. The town was founded in 1900.
The first houses were built in 1901, and that's the road of houses that we're on now.
That's Tammy Shoemaker. She grew up around Cass and now works as an information specialist for the Convention of Visitors Bureau at Snowshoe Mountain and Cass Scenic Railroad. She says the town was founded by the Virginia Pulp and Paper Company, which is now the multi-billion-dollar paper company Midwest-Vaco. They chose to set up in Cass because
they needed red spruce timber to make paper,
which grows several miles from Cass, in small circles in some of the highest country in the state, around 4,500 feet in elevation. The red spruce was carted down by train and processed at the sawmill in Cass. The whole operation went on like this for around 50 years and created a bustling economy for the area. At its peak, the town had more than 2,000 residents.
Yeah, it was a busy town. And that's not counting the woodhicks that lived up on the mountain.
The mountain men responsible for timbering the red spruce only came down to Cass every 6 months. They would cash their paychecks, head across the river, and party for a few days before heading back up the mountain. In 2018, Cass and the scenic railroads around it became a state park. Superintendent Marshall Markley says it takes a lot of work and collaboration to keep this park going. But he says there is nothing quite like it.
Yeah, there are other historical parks, but there's none quite like Cass. We're probably the best example of a historic railroad logging town in its most complete version, So we have the railroad portion, of course, and the company houses, and the company store, the depot, and all the supporting buildings, which in a lot of company towns, only a few pieces of that survive.
All this history and more is preserved, which Arbogast says is an uncommon fate for little towns like Cass.
Cass was destined to become what so many of these towns become, which is a memory, right? Gone.
But Cass remains through constant repairs to quickly built aging homes, special engineering of steam-powered trains, and a group of people who keep finding creative ways to push this town forward.
We're the only place in the country that has these 3 kinds of steam locomotives under steam and working. That's worth celebrating. The fact that these buildings, these houses, the history that's here is still here, that's worth preserving and celebrating. And figuring out the ways in which you honor that history but carry it forward in a new way for another generation.
Beginning in January, the oldest logging locomotive in the world will be running. There are other holiday-themed trains like a Halloween train during October, and through the summer and fall, there are scenic rides through the mountains. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Brianna Heaney in Cass.
Buying a refurbished smartphone instead of a new one can reduce the environmental impact up to 91%. That's according to the Penn Environment Research and Policy Center. The center has a shopping guide that includes tips on where and how to buy refurbished phones, laptops, and tablets at reduced prices. The Allegheny Front's Carol Holsopple spoke with Penn Environment's Belle Sherwood about the case for buying used.
The biggest thing that I think a lot of consumers don't realize is how much manufacturing is required to make the tiny thing in your pocket, a smartphone. From harvesting the materials from the earth, shipping them to all points of production, producing the materials themselves, working to build the chips, to build the case, to actually build a phone. The emissions required in that transport, the factory to get the brand new smartphone to the store, it adds up for each individual smartphone or tablet or a laptop. So when you buy refurbished, you're preventing an entirely new, unnecessary process from happening again. You're taking a phone, a laptop, a tablet that has already had a climate impact, yes, but you're preventing doing it again, essentially.
Is there a standard for the word refurbished or previously owned?
The short answer is no. So refurbished, like new, open box are a couple different terms you'll see used in this refurbishing space, and they can mean very different things. So we always encourage people, as outlined in the guide, to just check the item as soon as you get it. Make sure that it works, that the screen turns on, that you have sound and visual and everything you'd expect from whatever device you're buying, especially before you gift wrap it to send it to someone else. Most people who buy refurbished do have a great experience, but if you find an issue or something just isn't right, flag it early, and usually you can get a replacement quickly and easily from a lot of the sites we highlight in our guide. And you also want to check the return policy, of course. You can get anywhere between a couple weeks to maybe a full month to check out the item, make sure it works before that return window is up.
Yeah, what about warranties?
For all products, whether it's refurbished or not, it's really important to get protection, such as a warranty or like return or purchase insurance. A lot of refurbishers will actually have a standard 1-year warranty. Of course, that's dependent on the site you go to, but this is actually sometimes longer than the warranties you'll get on a brand new item itself.
Do you think that there's a stigma around giving gifts that are refurbished or used?
Absolutely. Our society, and I don't think it's out of pocket to say this, is very consumer driven, and we want a lot of things. We're always about giving things and getting things more. But when you have something that works, that can be repaired to make it work better, or to buy something used, that's still going to satisfy everything you need from the product. It just won't have whatever the minute latest update is. You're still getting everything you need, but at a better price for yourself and less of a cost to the earth. That's perhaps why it's called refurbished and not used, because a lot of people don't want to buy used items. But I don't know, the way I've seen it, thrifting's very much back in style here. We can just expand it to electronics.
For more about the shopping guide from Penn Environmental Research and Policy Center, visit the Allegheny Front. Most people head out into nature during the day, but there's a whole world out there waiting to be discovered during the night. Leanne Henyon is an author from Boone, North Carolina. Her book is about what happens after the sun goes down. It's called Night Magic: Adventures Among Glowworms, Moon Gardens, and Other Marvels of the Dark. Last year, producer Bill Lynch spoke with Henyon about staying up late to see wonders.
Would you like to read something?
I asked Tal if he's seen a change in people after these walks, peculiar as they are. In the literal sense, I don't really see people at all, he says with a laugh. This is, to him, one of the most interesting things about night walks. After greeting strangers in low light, he typically never sees them again, though they almost always go on to spend hours walking around together. Still, those unseen have a presence. He quickly learns the cadence of their voices, the character-revealing insights they share from the dark, which grants each attendee a shroud of privacy, even when enmeshed in a crowd. The most memorable transformations he's observed have taken place among teenagers. I've had kids terrified of the dark, shaking with fear. And once they see bioluminescence, they become entranced, he says. They shed fear. It's like they altogether forget it's something they were carrying. In front of me, I sense a tumble. Root, he shouts. Root, I say, turning my head to amplify the alert. Root, 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 vocal cords ping. In Victorian times, people marked trees to guide them home. They dug braille-like pots on trunks to help them feel their way along. It's an intimacy of place that Tal seems to have without causing tree damage. So acquainted he is with this landscape. And it is his familiarity that's allowing us to travel freely. Tonight, the familiar wilds of these mountains have been made strange. We're still a good journey away from Tal's fungal discovery, but we pause when we see a puddle of ethereal light beside the trail. It's surrounded by flecks of light that speckle the ground like paint splatter. Tal explains that it's mycelium in the process of consuming fallen leaves. If I turned a flashlight on, he says, this would just look like ordinary leaf litter. Tal picks up a handful of light and gives it to me. The leaves are cool and damp, well on their way to decay. I cannot see the teenager behind me, so I hold the glowing pile of mycelium up to announce it as an offering. inhaling wafts of the leaf's mild medicinal scent. She is the youngest of the group, and she stayed in her father's car until the minute we left the parking lot, cell phone light pointed directly at her eyes. In the dark, I've heard her emit a few grunts, indicating that she'd rather be somewhere else. But in this moment, she comes across as wholly present. She seems to be carrying a fear of missing out on cell phone time more than she's exhibiting a fear of the dark. But she sighs when she accepts the mycelium, as though she's traded something heavy for a puff of light. How beautiful, she whispers. We are, in essence, watching death become life. We are watching darkness being transformed into light. The teenager stares into the handful of alchemy before finally passing it on. Mycelium, she announces, letting the person behind her know what's coming, announcing wonder as she had previously passed on warnings. Mycelium, mycelium, mycelium. Each handoff is announced, connecting us to each other. We are no longer faces. We are no longer hands. We are all part of the darkness. Because in this forest, the glow of this leaf litter is all that visibly exists. It moves through the night, tracing the path of our voices, like a luminescent cloud pushed by invisible winds.
So a book about the dark, like the magical aspects of the dark, the kind of almost romantic notion of nature. How did you get to this?
Well, so the book was inspired in part by a magazine piece that I wrote for the Washington Post magazine. I did a piece about the synchronous fireflies of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So, a lot of people are familiar with these fireflies. I had been familiar for years, and I'd always wanted to go see them, but I never made it down. So I finally did. And I think when I pitched this story, I said something along the lines of, I am going to go and I'm going to find light rising as a form of hope in dark times. And it was really hopeful. It was really gorgeous. But what I realized in that process was that I had not spent much time walking around in the dark without a flashlight. And I found it to be incredibly restorative. So coming out of a time and a life situation where I'm just around screens and lights so much, it was really a respite from that. And I learned a lot about light pollution in the process of learning about fireflies because it does disrupt their life cycles. It disrupts life cycles of pretty much every living creature on Earth. So after that piece ran, I had readers reaching out to tell me that after they read this story, it had inspired them to start turning off their porch lights more often. They did it because they got really curious to find out if maybe there was something that they hadn't noticed in their own yard. In a sense, that then sent me on my great quest to get to know a variety of nocturnal creatures. Ultimately, they taught me that I did not know very much about my own yard.
How did you choose, I guess, the critters included in the book?
So many critters. Well, it kind of starts, there are a few that I kind of isolated out, like as this is what I'm going in search of. And then of course, in the process of going in search of these creatures, I end up encountering, things I couldn't have imagined. So I'm not sure each one sort of just came to me, maybe each one's something that I'd always had an interest in. I kind of had a vague notion about this, but it's salamander migration that takes place in the spring. This was an opportunity to say, how do you figure out where spotted salamanders are migrating? And owls, I actually set out, I wanted to have an encounter with a saw-whet owl, and I still would really love to have an encounter with the saw-whet owl. But in the end, I ended up spending a good bit of time with a family of screech owls. Glowworms, I did not know they existed. It was actually looking for fireflies that I ended up encountering glowworms for the first time in southern Appalachia, one of the few places on Earth that neon blue glowworms exist. And yeah, spoiler alert, these are some of the things I found in my own neighborhood. So bats and then foxfire. I loved going out in search of bioluminescent mushrooms. It blew my mind to consider, we have fields of flowers in daylight, but there are just entire night blooming landscapes. It's like doubling the known world. So that was fantastic. And then ultimately I ended up, after spending time with all of these species, I did write a chapter about humans, to think about the human relationship to darkness and the human relationship to light, which really has changed exponentially over just a few generations.
How difficult was it to get out there to find these things or to encounter these things at night?
We tend to think of light and dark as kind of like light switch on, light switch off. That's the electrified world that we kind of live in indoors. But, outside and in natural cycles, there is an absolute easing of darkness and an easing of light. And so dusk and dawn are fantastic times to, witness activities that you can't see, in the middle of the day, like night blooming flowers, for instance. But, a lot of the other species were not, at 3:00 in the morning. I mean, just evenings instead of like watching Netflix or something. Like instead I was wandering, around outside with no lights, which again, restorative. It was like this unexpected respite really from the daily activities of an electrified and virtual culture.
That was North Carolina author Leanne Henyon speaking with Bill Lynch. Her book is Night Magic: Adventures Among Glowworms, Moon Gardens, and Other Marvels of the Dark. It's published by Algonquin Books of Chapel Hill. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by the Sycamores, Bob Thompson, the Capella Bell Choir, and the Carpenter Ants. Bill Lynch is our producer. Xander Alloy is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Nicole Musgrave. You can find us on Instagram @inappalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.